Today, we are diving into an absolutely incredible story of survival. It's a story where incredible skill, a whole lot of luck, and a chain of tiny, seemingly unrelated errors all collided thousands of feet above the dark ocean. So, picture this. You've got a massive 200-ton passenger jet just cruising through the night sky. And then, suddenly, the engines just go silent. It's not really an airplane anymore. It has become a giant glider. And it's doing this completely powerless, gliding over the vast black expanse of the Atlantic Ocean, hundreds of miles from any runway. Now, this wasn't some kind of simulation. This was the terrifying reality for the 306 souls on board Air Transat Flight 236. Okay, so let's get right into it. Our story starts on August 24th, 2001. Air Transat Flight 236 is just a routine overnight flight heading from Toronto to Portugal. You know the scene. Passengers have finished their meals, the cabin lights are down, and the plane is just peacefully making its way across the Atlantic. Everything seems completely, totally normal. But then, at 6:26 in the morning, the unthinkable happens. That constant, reassuring hum of the jet engines, it just vanishes. First the right engine sputters and dies, then the left. The cabin is plunged into darkness and this really eerie silence. The plane is now a ghost ship, with no power, 144 kilometers from the closest piece of land. So the big question is, right, how in the world does a state-of-the-art Airbus A330 just run out of fuel in the middle of the ocean? Well, believe it or not, the answer starts 9 days earlier, with a tiny, almost unnoticeable mechanical issue. So it all kicks off on August 15th. A routine check finds some little metal chips in the engine's oil. 2 days later, they find more, and it's decided the engine has to be replaced. Problem is, the airline doesn't have a spare. So they get a loaner from Rolls-Royce, and the maintenance crew is told they have to get it installed overnight to keep the plane on its schedule. I mean, the pressure is really on. Okay, so this is where the real problem starts. The loaner engine? See, it was an older model. Think of it like trying to use an old phone charger with a brand new phone. It might look like it fits, but the connections inside are just a little bit different. The mechanics, working against the clock, installed the hydraulic tube from the old engine design right next to a fuel tube made for the new plane system. These two parts were never ever meant to be together, and almost immediately they started to rub against each other. And what's just bone-chilling is that a Rolls-Royce service manual had an explicit warning against doing this exact thing. It said, flat out, that the tubes must always be replaced as a matched set. But, and you won't believe this, when the lead technician went to look it up in the digital manual, the network was down. Now, the information was on CDs, right there in the hangar, but in that race against time, nobody knew or even thought to check. A shortcut was taken. So, with that ticking time bomb now installed, the plane actually flew several more times, and with every single vibration, those mismatched tubes were rubbing together, slowly grinding away at the fuel line. Okay, let's jump forward now, back into the cockpit of Flight 236, hours into its journey over the Atlantic. So the pilots get their first hint of trouble, a fuel imbalance warning on their screen. It's showing that the right wing tank has a lot less fuel than the left. Now, you have to understand, in modern jets, sensor glitches aren't that uncommon. So they assumed it was just a computer error, not an actual physical leak. I mean, that's something that's basically unheard of in commercial aviation. So this is the crucial point. Instead of pulling out the full written checklist for this kind of problem, a checklist that had a specific warning about a potential leak, the crew just performed the balancing procedure from memory. They opened what's called a crossfeed valve, thinking they were sending fuel from the full left tank over to the right engine to balance things out. But what they actually did was send all of their remaining good fuel directly into the leaking system, which just massively sped up the fuel loss. And if you think that's bad, get this. 4 years to the day before this all happened, after a similar fuel leak on another flight, French aviation authorities actually recommended that Airbus install an automated leak warning system. The manufacturer did update its procedures, but that automated warning system, it was never implemented. Which brings us right back to that silent, dark cockpit. With both engines totally dead, Captain Robert Pichet, a pilot who actually had a ton of experience flying gliders, faced a truly impossible task. He had to glide a 200-ton jumbo jet to a safe landing. 19 minutes. For 19 minutes, Flight 236 flew with 0 engine power. To this day, it is the longest unpowered glide of a commercial passenger jet in history. just a terrifying, unprecedented, and completely silent fall from the sky. Inside that dark cabin, you can only imagine the terror and confusion. An 18-year-old passenger named Vasco dos Santos later said he remembered thinking about all the plane crash movies he'd ever seen, and then realizing it was actually happening to him. The crew, trying to keep everyone calm, began preparing them for the absolute worst-case scenario, ditching in the ocean. So, what is a water ditching? Well, it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like, a controlled crash on water. And it is incredibly dangerous. Pilots have to judge the waves perfectly, the angle, the height, and trying to do that at night over a black ocean, it's almost impossible. And to really get what was on the line here, just look at these numbers. While most people actually survive the initial impact of a water landing, that number drops off a cliff when you factor in things like drowning and hypothermia. And for a nighttime ditching in the cold Atlantic, those odds would have been much, much worse. But Captain Pichet didn't have to ditch. Guiding this powerless behemoth through the darkness, he spotted the runway lights of Lajes Air Base out on the Azores Islands. He knew he had one shot. That's it. No engines means you don't get a second chance, no go-around. He brought the massive glider in. Now, the landing was not smooth. It was incredibly hard. The emergency brakes locked up, tires just blew out, and sparks from the landing gear even started a small fire. But it worked. In less than 2 minutes, all 306 people were off that plane. The result? Absolutely miraculous. 0 fatalities. So Captain Pichet was hailed as a global hero, right? Well, that's when the story takes a wild turn. News broke that 20 years earlier, he had actually served prison time for smuggling drugs. The media just exploded, questioning how a former convict could ever be in command of a passenger jet. It started this huge debate that almost overshadowed the miracle he had just pulled off. In the end, when investigators looked back at all of this, they realized it wasn't caused by any one person or any single mistake. It was the result of what experts often call a chain of failure, where a bunch of small things go wrong in just the right, or I guess wrong, sequence. And this is really the key takeaway from the whole thing. It all started with that maintenance shortcut because of time pressure. That mistake was then compounded by an unread manual. Next up, the pilots made a critical error by relying on their memory instead of the checklist. And then the final safety net, that recommended warning system, it just wasn't there to catch any of it. Each link in this chain was a chance to prevent the disaster, and each one broke. The story of Flight 236 is, without a doubt, an amazing tale of survival and unbelievable skill. But it's also this really powerful reminder of just how fragile our complex systems can be. And it leaves you with a pretty critical question to think about. Just how many small, seemingly minor errors does it take for everything